Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to More Wild Talk. We appreciate you being with us tonight, and we are going to be talking about why we are unhappy. Although, I'm not really that unhappy.
Wait till the end of the show.
Wait till the end of the show, and then we'll all be unhappy. But while we're waiting for some folks to get on and join us, we want to go through some announcements real quick and kind of talk about some things that are coming up. First of all, this Sunday, Peyton will be preaching out of Genesis, second episode, I guess,
Yes.
of Genesis. Peyton will be talking about being made in the image of God, so you want to look at Genesis 1, 26 and 27. But actually, we're asking everybody as we go through this series that you read through Genesis 1 through 11 as often as you can, so you really get familiar with the Scripture. In addition to the sermon that's preached every Sunday out of Genesis, Peyton and Tracy are doing a podcast. And so you might want to get on and listen to that. It's at BiblePeel.com. Is that correct?
TheBiblePeel.com.
TheBiblePeel.com. You can go to the podcast link, and basically Peyton and Tracy will be talking more in depth about the particular passage that's being preached on that Sunday.
And they can also go on, iTunes, Spotify. Just type in the Bible Peel. It is P-E-E-L and not P-I-L-L. BiblePeel.com. And
I
you'll
thought it
be
was
able to.
P-E-A-L.
Well,
Is it peel, or peel? Or
you're gonna get the same results as those who spell it P-I-L-L. So.
Okay. Well, anyway, you might be able to find it if you keep looking.
Just keep peeling it.
Try
back.
every spelling of peel that you can think of, and you might get there. Although on my podcast little thing, I can't find it on Pocket Cast.
Yeah.
So
Looks like Peyton put it into the comments as well.
He put in a
link.
So you can look in the comments and link there, and go listen to them talk a little bit more about it. Also on Monday, we are having free COVID testing here at the church building, and I believe that's Lab 24. I think is the name of the lab that's going to be doing the testing. It's free. You need to sign up, or we encourage you to sign up ahead of time. You should see that on the screen, a place where you can go and fill in the information. You get all that information filled in, and therefore it makes it a lot quicker procedure once you get here. You just it's one of those drive-through tests, so you can get in and out. You don't get a particular appointment. You just come between 11 and 2 and get in line and go through, and if you've already registered online, then you can get right in and out. We're really encouraging you to do that because obviously, as you've been reading most likely, there's a push to try to test as many people as we can in our country, and particularly in our community, so we get a better idea of how the COVID virus is going in our area. So I invite you to come by between 11 and 2 on Monday to take part in that COVID testing. All right, Tracy. I think we're ready to jump into our topic.
Okay, you've given all the unhappy news,
Right.
Or happy news.
No,
Now
it's
we
happy.
get to the.
You get to come and have a swab stuck up your nose.
You can't beat that, really.
No, you can't beat that.
No, Joe and I, we talk each week about what do we want to talk about, and there was an article that came out this week. Some of you may have seen it, and it's put out by the University of Chicago. And what they have found in their study is that folks in the U.S. are more unhappy today than they've been in nearly 50 years. And what they found is that 14% of American adults say they're very happy. And that's down 31% who said the same thing in 2018. That year, 23% said they had often or sometimes felt isolated in recent weeks. Now 50% say that. And so this study has drawn nearly a half century of research. It's from the General Social Survey, which has collected data on American attitudes and behaviors at least every other year since 1972. So no less than 29% of Americans, in all of these studies, no less than 29% of Americans have ever called themselves very happy in that survey. And now it's at 14%, which is an all-time low. Most of the new surveys that were interviewed, and this survey it was based on really during the time of COVID-19 at its height. Of course, I don't think it's maybe even hit its height, but COVID-19, but this was before George Floyd and all the social unrest that's happening right now. So, maybe if they took it now, it would even be worse, at least for certain people. So here's my question, Joe. Is it fair to say that people want to be happy?
Well, I think everybody wants to be happy.
Yeah, I think so.
Everybody wants to be happy. I mean, obviously, we don't live in a world that guarantees you happiness.
No, we don't.
But we do live in a country that allows you to pursue happiness.
Pursue happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So of course, part of the survey, you're taking a survey with the COVID thing going on, and it's not a shock that more people feel like they're alone and isolated.
Right, exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
that's a given. And obviously, in something like this kind of situation with a worldwide pandemic that we've never seen before in this way, with the lockdowns that we've never seen before in this way, yeah, there's going to be a lot of negative feelings about what's going on.
Yeah. And I think it would even be fair to say, and just get what you think about this, Joe, as well, but I think just about everything we do is for happiness. I mean, can you think
that's a good question.
Can you think of things that
But I didn't
that
think
we
I
do?
didn't think we were going to do a philosophy class tonight.
Well, we'll have to have Darian for the real
Yeah.
philosophical stuff.
Yeah.
But what are things you think, we do this because we want to be happy?
What are things we do?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you go back to self and selfless
Right.
things, and so we tend to get caught up in happiness is going to be what's good for me,
Right.
what makes me feel good.
Right.
And so you tend to bias that way as far as that goes. What makes me feel good. Problem is, it's a fallen world. Things are always going to go wrong.
Right.
Nothing's gonna be perfect. We're not living in the Garden of Eden.
Right.
So there's always something going to go wrong, and so therefore you're always going to be, man, this is messing me up. This is getting in my way. This is preventing me from doing this. And so you get locked down and you're losing your job, or your job is you're on furlough, and you're at the house and you can't go out, and so on and so forth. You can't go to church. You can't do this. You can't do that. There's no sports.
Right.
There's all kinds of those kind of things going on. And I think too, as human beings, we just have a negativity bias. I think that's pretty much the research shows that we tend to, if you've ever gone through marriage counseling, you're told, well, look, you got to say four good things to counteract that one bad thing.
Right.
Because you have the negativity bias,
Sure.
and you just pay more attention to the negative things. That becomes bigger in your mind than the good things that are going on.
And really what we try to do is continue to fill our lives with things we think are going to make us happy, right? And some of these are good things, such as marriage.
Right.
We marry someone because we think it's going to bring greater happiness to our lives,
Right.
or bring children into the world. I think it'd even be fair to say the television shows we watch. We watch these shows because we think these are things that are going to make us happy.
You know where I'm going with that.
I do know where you're going.
Those shows drive me crazy. I know exactly.
Those shows.
Those
Man,
shows.
I'm going to get Glenda to weigh in because I know she knows what those shows are. But, we buy houses, we buy cars. And I would even, and this is, kind of going to what you're saying, is even looking for a church home. Because we get this, churches around, they get the same thing. People come in and they say, we're looking for a church home. And they're looking for something that's going to make them happy. It's going to make the whole family happy. better, whatever you want to call it. But I do think that just about everything we do it because we want to have a greater sense of happiness.
Right.
Is what I would say.
Right.
No, Glenda, not Hallmark movies. That is not what I'm talking about.
No.
So you've talked already about some of the reasons why we've had a dip in the happiness. You know, you've got COVID-19, you've got the social unrest, and really it's more than that. It's what those things stand for. The isolation. You know, we've watched our people here at church who they've struggled during this time. They've really missed being with their church family. They're wondering, you know, they were wondering, when are we ever going to get back? You see people, I mean, we're sports guys. I mean, we're about tired of Major League Baseball messing around, right?
There's nothing to talk about.
That's right. They're taking away our sense of happiness. You know, other gatherings, concerts, places that people gather, these are a sense of bringing us together. And it just shows us, you know, and I know you've mentioned already that this Genesis series that Peyton and I are in, but it shows us that we were created for a community. We were created to be with people. You know, even introverts like yourself, you know, you may not want to be around a whole group of people at the same time, but you enjoy the time that you have with people in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I would say that's something that people have missed. In fact, in this survey, it talked about this 47-year-old professional. They live near Greenville, South Carolina, and they said they felt anxious and depressed, and said she moved back to South Carolina late in 2019, and then her cat died. Then her father passed away in February. And just when she thought she would get out and socialize to try to kind of heal from some of the grief, the pandemic hits. There was another account in this survey as well. It says about twice as many Americans report being lonely today as in 2018. Not surprising, of course, because of the lockdown. But there's also been a drop in satisfaction with social activities and relationships. Compared with 2018, Americans also are about twice as likely to say they sometimes or often have felt a lack of companionship. 47% versus 27%. Or they have felt left out, which is 37% versus 18% over the last 4 years. So that kind of goes with what you're talking about there as well. Let me ask you this. I mean, this is a time of stress. This is a time a lot of people are having anxiety because of lots of different things. But there's something we usually do, maybe once, twice, some more than that every year, is to relax, to go on vacation, to travel, to recreate. And that's kind of been a problem, hasn't it?
Well, it's a problem right now because nobody wants to get on an airplane. You know, you're kind of staying away from the airplane. You're you're a little fearful of staying in a hotel somewhere that you don't know who's been in there the night before. You just don't want to be around a whole crowd of people, which you tend to, you know, go to Disney World or something like that. I mean, you're around a whole crowd of people, and so that's the problem. Now, you know, I think we're learning some more stuff about the COVID that may make us feel a little more comfortable in getting outside, right, and doing things like that, and getting some recreation done, and maybe, you know, visiting some parks and walking in the woods and doing those kind of things that are good things that are going to outweigh those bad things that are happening. But there's just a whole lot of negative in everything that's happened in the last couple months. And so, you know, how do you get out of that? You know, right. How do you break out of that?
Yeah. Well, and you're right. And so you really have to find a way to release some of the stress, to release some of the anxiety that you're feeling during this time, where a lot of people it's based around a week or a few weeks a year, or maybe a retreat, maybe even things like team sports, you know. But those are things you have to think about. The other thing is finances, layoffs, unemployment, is high. We hear a lot about affordable housing. So in this study, it said the public is less optimistic today about the standard of living improving for the next generation than it has been in the past 25 years. Only 42% of Americans believe that when their child reaches their age, their standard of living will be better. A solid 57% said that in 2018. The previous low was 45% in 1994. So people right now are concerned a lot about, really providing, and maybe more than just providing. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that's just all part of just what's happened. You just get you have a negative feeling about everything. You wonder how are we going to get out of this, and what's the solution to this and that. And part of the problem with being stuck at home is you tend to get on the social media more, and the social media is just all about things that are out of control, pandemonium, hyper news, trying to get you riled up, trying to get you to click and go here, and you have to have some kind of sensational lead-in or headline in order to grab somebody's attention. And if you get going into that, you're really gonna feel bad. I mean, you're really gonna feel like this world is falling apart. You're gonna forget all the good stuff that's happening, and the good things that are around, and good things that you can do in the situation you're in.
I think you bring up a very good point. The information highway is a lot different than it was, years ago. I mean, back in your day,
way back then.
How did people get their
rotary
news?
dial telephones and things like that?
Yes, rotary dial. Yes.
Yeah.
But how did people get their information about the world?
That's it. You watched the nightly news.
The nightly news on
For
your
a-
3 channels
for a half hour,
for a half hour.
and then that was really all you were getting. And the newspaper
Newspaper.
in the morning.
And now it's when something happens, you're not going to find. Now my hometown, and I think it's still like this, the newspaper comes out once a week. So if something happened in the town, I mean, of course it's a small town, you're probably going to find out anyway. But if it's going to be in the newspaper, if it happened on Friday, well, the newspaper comes out on Thursday. But now, anytime something happens, I know on my phone, breaking news.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even. I don't even have to turn on a computer.
It's not even any time something happens. It's a lot of times nothing happened, but they say something happened.
Right.
And you never get that figured out. It takes a day or so to get everything straightened out on what really happened, because everyone's jumping the gun and trying to get the first click, so to speak. I mean, so what's the solution to that? You get off social media.
Yeah, that's one of the things you can do.
Start following people that do positive things and have positive stories and have positive reports, instead of all the negative stuff. In other words, if you're on Facebook or Twitter or any of those things, you control what you're looking at.
Right.
You can control that. So you have to decide, do I want to get mired in this negative stuff, or do I want to, maybe look at that every once in a while, or maybe like we used to do, around 6 or 6:30, you go get the evening news, and then you're done.
So basically, just like cut it off through the week,
Yeah.
or through the day, and maybe once a day. But I do think that feeds into the unhappiness, because, like you said, we know what sells newspapers, right? It's the same thing with social media and everything else, and so we're constantly being bombarded. And I think right now, with everything going on in the world, everybody has a cell phone. Everybody has a video that they are uploading of something bad that happened. And it's not that, injustices are not happening. I think it's more of it's being reported much faster, and you're seeing many more occasions than maybe what you were used to.
Absolutely.
So, this was interesting in the article. Jonathan Burney of Austin, Texas, he said that the pandemic and his resulting layoff as a digital marketing manager for a law firm it caused him to reevaluate everything in his life. And while he admits that he's not exactly happy now, it's led to another uncomfortable question. Was he truly happy before the pandemic?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was an interesting statement.
Yeah, and that's kind of akin to some of the businesses that have gone out of business because of the pandemic, which probably meant they were on that way anyway. And this
Right.
just hurried them along. And so are some of us, that's just where we were anyway. And this is just kind of taking us further down the road we were going.
Right.
As far as our attitudes was concerned about what's going on in their lives.
Yeah. And I think you could even say that spiritually.
Right.
You may be on a spiritual decline,
Mm-hmm.
but things like this just
keep you right on going
just
downhill.
keeps you going.
Yeah.
And it's been very comparable in this article that the emotions that people feel is very similar to what people felt during the time of John F. Kennedy's assassination,
Mm-hmm.
what happened after the terrorist attacks on September 11th. And so this pandemic, and this, like I said, this is before even the social unrest that's been happening, that people are feeling this deeply. They're, it's like this is a catastrophic, a tragedy that's occurred in our country.
Yeah, and it's still ongoing.
And it's,
Yeah,
that's which is
and
why
you-
we're talking about
And
it.
you can't see, you don't really see the end of it yet.
Right.
You keep saying, people, will have a vaccine maybe next year.
Right.
So what does that mean for the rest of this year? Is it going to be, is it going to be up and down, closed sometimes? We're back open, we're back closed. It's a lot of uncertainty, and that makes it difficult to be positive.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so how do we be positive?
Well, this is an interesting, another survey I found, and it's called The Science of Happiness, and it talks about that there's this baseline happiness that we all have. So when something good happens, we go above that average line. If something bad happens, catastrophic, whatever, we go below this line. But what they found is that after some time, we come back to the baseline. So no matter if it's good, no matter if it's bad, we eventually are going to come back to our baseline. And so what they have found in this research, it's by Dr. Ed, I hope I'm saying this right, Diner, Diener. He's found that even after such drastic life changes, such as winning the lottery, for example, he says, and being paralyzed, that happiness will eventually return to its baseline. Another research shows that we have there's reasons why people feel this way, and 50% of people have a genetic. Genetic has something to do with their thoughts, I guess, maybe negative thoughts. And then some of that, then the other portion of it is the conditions, which is some of what we've been talking about here. These are these external circumstances, which we often tend to focus on the most, such as money or status, jobs, cars, beautiful houses. But what they found is even when things are going really well, you're at this baseline and something good is happening in your life, say you got a raise or you got that car you always wanted, that it doesn't take that much time before you're back down to the baseline again.
Sure.
In other words, bad things are going on in our world, but even if really good things are happening, they're temporary. So I think what I want to talk about just a little bit as we get closer to the end here is what are things that we can kind of really sink into that's going to help us. And that doesn't mean we're not going to have some bad moments, that we're not going to have depression and anxiety. I think the psalmist shows us this. Jesus in the garden shows us about these things. But there are certain things that helps to kind of give us an adjustment back to where we need to be. I've had a pretty rough day. I'm not going to talk about it, but I've had a kind of a pretty rough day. And so I'm sitting here this afternoon. I'm like, how in the world am I going to get up and talk about unhappiness? So I had to do some things to really get out of this funk a little bit. And some of the things I do, I'm going to talk about here. one passage. It comes from the Psalms. I know that shocks you. But Psalm 37:4, he says, "Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you your heart's desires." And the word delight, it comes from a Hebrew word that means to pamper yourself. And so what he's saying is, divert your attention from these material success and find delight in your relationship with God. Because the relationship that we have with God is something that's here, is something that's sustainable, is something that we can continue to live in. And I think the other thing is our hope in Christ. You know, you go to Romans 8 and you find a very stressed out world. Mm-hmm. You know, the earth is groaning, the inhabitants are groaning, and yet he says, you know, God's Spirit just comes and he takes those things in those moments and our really bad, unhappy times and takes them before the throne of God. But I love the way he ends it. He comes back and he says, but all things work together for good to those who are called according to his purpose.
Absolutely.
So in the moment, it's hard to think in those terms, but really what you have to do is to realize that even the bad stuff, that God can do something good with if we trust him.
Right. In fact, we talked, you talk about those guys. We talked last week about some good things maybe that could come out of this tragedy in Minnesota. I mean,
right.
That presents us an opportunity to do things maybe that should have been done, years ago, or whatever, and make progress there. And also, we're told, we should focus on the good. Right. We should focus on the good things. I mean, I'm
things
fortunate.
Are pure, whatsoever things are
exactly,
good report.
And I'm fortunate. I have a nice front porch that looks out on a pond that I can go out every morning and look at God's creation. I can focus on that, and so you do things like that, and that's a great help.
Yeah.
In dealing with the negativity that's going to come probably every day. Yeah. With some of the news you're going to hear or anything like that. So it's you got to focus on the good. Not only focus on the good, but you should be sharing the good news.
Yeah. That's what we're called to do. Yeah.
Sharing just the joys that happen in your life and with other people's and when people share something with you, you should be enthusiastic about it. Like, that's great.
Right.
Rejoice
with those who rejoice,
right.
And weep with those who weep.
Right.
And so right now for many, they're in a time of weeping. I think we need to weep with them, but we also need to find those good things that are out there.
Right.
And the Bible talks about this thing. It doesn't really say happy as much as joy, because there's a difference.
Yeah. We'd like to point that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the joy that we have is in the Lord. And it's not based on our circumstances. It's based on who we are in Christ. Yeah. And the hope that we have.
Well, and we know the joy we get when we go out and serve other people. When we really do something, we try to do the selfless thing instead of the self thing. You get a whole different feeling, a whole different appreciation of the other person when you can serve that other person.
Yeah.
Or serve God. I mean, like I say, you're doing the things that God wants you to do, that Jesus wants you to do.
Yeah. Right now, I think I think a lot of people feel like they're defeated. And what's interesting about the word joy, it's a word that's used in the New Testament of victory. And the victory is different than our world's mindset of what is a victory. Because right now in the world mindset, we're just being defeated. But victory, as joy is being used, is salvation. It is just being in the presence of God, being in the presence of Christ, our bridegroom who's come to us. And I think those things will help. And as we get ready to close, I do want to really push folks, not because Peyton and I are doing this, but this series in Genesis is really important. Last week we talked about the creation story is much more than looking at, here's the way it happened. And we see that out of darkness and out of chaos, that God brings forth light, and he creates this beautiful world. And we're up to Peyton, and he's talking about how we're made. And I think a lot of people right now, they don't feel very good about themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a good time to learn about really who you are. And then the next week, I'm going to be talking about the seventh day, which we generally pass over. Mm-hmm. That may be the most exciting day of the whole creation. In fact, I think it is. And it's
I like to rest.
Yeah. Well, the Bible talks a lot about rest.
Yeah.
And it's this idea that we're on a journey to seventh day.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful concept. And so when we understand this journey we're on, that there is something at the end, it's really an awesome thing.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of change that can happen if we truly look at everyone we see as made in the image of God.
Absolutely.
A lot of change that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Joe, you got anything else?
No.
All right. Well, we appreciate you joining us tonight. We hope that this may be helpful in some way, at least to do some introspection for yourself. We're here to help people, and if you're out there and you're struggling in some way, please let us know. We want to help you in this wonderful journey that we're on. We'll share some really good news with you. And so, anyway, we appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next week.
Good night.